you literary legends and luminaries. I'm Julie and welcome to another episode of Booksmart. Today's book will either enlighten you or depress you. It's Now for the Disappointing Part, a pseudo-adult's decade of short-term jobs, long-term relationships, and holding out for something better by Stephen Barker. I'm exhausted just from the title. This book was published in 2016, yet I think it's even more significant now, post-pandemic, especially when we talk about jobs and careers and purpose and work. Stephen Barker was born in 1980, putting him right at the beginning edge of millennials. I was born just 3 years before, making me the youngest part of Generation X, so I could relate to the time period in which Barker wrote. This book is classified as humor, at least according to the back. Yeah, it was funny, but not that funny. It was a bit depressing at times, almost apathetic with its blahness. It's an essay book, so you know I like that part about it. It's just, well, it was just so-so, which represents Generation X well as millennial attitudes. I just wasn't laughing all that much. Who decides which books are humor? Couldn't this have been categorized as a memoir? Anyhow, you might be familiar with Stephen Barker, but I wasn't. He wrote the open letter to Amazon about temp work and lack of job security. Barker makes several good points. His letter is printed in the book, and he is an expert in the realm of temp work because he is a perpetual temp. I was a temp as well, but only for summers during college. Barker is a temp as a career. His essays span high school to his current mid-30s state. He's worked at a warehouse, is a content writer for Expedia, an Amazon reviewer, and a Cortana creative writer, just to name a few. He says he averages about 10 interviews per year. He even has an essay about the 5 different types of temps, which you can apply to non-temp work as well. He paints a dreary, albeit relatable, picture of the American workplace. I'll read you this short piece explaining how the old temps trained the new temps, and one of the bossier veteran temps called Barker into his office to discuss a mistake Barker knew he made but didn't care to correct. And he says, I'm going to have to pay more attention to your work, he continued. I felt sad for him that he cared so much. It was his first contract out of college, and there was hope in his eye. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shout, don't you realize none of this matters? What do you think we've got left? 30 to 40 years? Have you ever had a Washington peach? The season just started. They're so juicy. Way better than that artificial stuff you drink. Let's hitchhike to the country. We can pull peaches right off the branch and eat them, watching the sunset. Let's remind ourselves what is real. So, does it matter? Does our menial job duties in any sort of important job matter at all? Even if you're a doctor or a lawyer, jobs that save and destroy lives, there are aspects of such important careers that don't matter. Maybe it's paperwork, meetings, some bureaucratic policy that makes everyone miserable that serves no purpose. I worked retail all through high school, and so much of what I did never mattered. I've been a teacher in some capacity, either as an adjunct at a community college or at the high school level, and there are lots of aspects of my job that don't matter. We've all attended meetings that could have been an email. We've all read emails that never needed to be sent. We've all sat through meetings where policies and procedures are decided, only to have the people that set such policies and procedures break those policies and procedures the very next day. It's rather dreary to think that at least some of what we do in the workplace doesn't matter. It's part of life, I guess, but that's the part of what Barker ponders. Some people put their whole life into work. He never states this, but it's the live to work or work to live philosophy. It's easy to see that Barker is a work to live sort of guy, if even that, considering he has no benefits. So what does he do for health insurance? I have no idea. And he has no consistent form of income. However, it's scary to think so many workers don't care, especially those that handle food we eat or those who take care of our kids. It's anxiety-inducing if you give it too much thought. Because we don't always care about our jobs, Barker then ponders why we don't pursue our passion projects more often. He writes this profound paragraph regarding what possibly may happen should we do such a thing. I was aware society would collapse if everyone only pursued passion projects because a world with more ventriloquists than vegetable pickers was not a better one. I just couldn't understand how a system based on majority rule could produce more unhappy people than happy people. It kept me up so late that it became early and I heard my neighbors lock their doors as they left for work. I'm sure they agreed with me and probably had something they'd rather be doing instead of heading to their job, but the burden of debt caused them to believe that wasn't an option. Think about how he said, we've built this society, and yet how many people are really happy with their jobs? It's a very fascinating thought to consider. I agree with him, yet there's this part of me that wants to smack him into reality. He obviously has choices. He has the luxury of deciding not to work, where to work, and how he's going to work. If that fails, he can always ask his dad for money, which he does write about. If he can't pay his rent, he can just move back home. A lot of people don't have that option or that luxury. At times when I was reading this, I wanted to yell at him to grow up. Yet at other times, I commended him for giving the finger to societal expectations and somehow making it all work out for him, although I wouldn't want to spend my days on the couch like he did. His main argument is liking what your work is and how you make a living. That's the ultimate goal, yet how are some jobs ever likable? Part of his relatability comes from his introverted personality. I've never read another essay or book that brings up these 2 points. The first one deals with break time. He prefers to spend it alone, sometimes reading a book and eating in his car or sitting on a bench in nice weather. And he's always eating a turkey sandwich, the only kind of sandwich I ever order. He writes this: there was still too much risk you'd be forced into small talk during your only moment of contentedness of the day. It's not that your coworkers are bad people. It's just that the work drains your ability to be social. Your only real goal for lunch is solitude. That is me. When I taught full-time at a typical high school, I never spent my lunchtime in the break room. The last thing I wanted to do was talk to people after I taught all morning. I loved eating my lunch in my empty classroom, but such a decision separates you from the social part of work. I didn't know the other teachers well, and they probably all thought I was a snot or something for not hanging out. At the end of the school day, the last thing I wanted to do was talk to anybody. This severely hampers many aspects of your work life, especially when most jobs, it doesn't matter how hard you work or that the work you do is good or creative or effective or what have you. It's all about who you befriend, and that ultimately what gets you ahead. Part of Barker's apathy for work results from refusing to play office politics. He sees that too. The ones who should get promoted don't. The second point he brings up deals with our creative energy. One of his temp jobs was filing, literally filing for 6 hours straight. He writes, 6 hours of filing may have been monotonous, but when I returned home, I hadn't been stripped of my desire to create. Bingo. As a teacher, I've had to be very careful how much of my creative energy I spend in and out of the classroom. I'm one of those people who goes overboard on activities. For instance, I made a Price is Right version from the Depression, even going so far as to print the vintage packaging of Twinkies and Hershey bars and stick them to the products. I spent so much time creating that game that not only did I have little time to write, but I no longer had the creative energy to do so. While the students enjoyed the game, was it worth it? I was exhausted after the 90 minutes. I have no educational aid to assist me, so I was Bob Barker and Diane, Holly, and Janice, not to mention Rod, Roddy, all at the same time. I haven't done it again despite all the time I spent on it, because was it worth all that energy, not to mention money? I don't know. And that's the constant question. I used to spend a ton of time outside of school creating things. I don't anymore. First of all, I've built up quite a bit of stuff already anyway, so I can pull from things I've already done. But in terms of creating new things, it comes at a cost to me. And now at my age, I value my free time more than ever. In fact, I value my time more than money. I'd rather live with less if that meant I have more time. And that's part of what Barker is pondering. He's not even pondering it, he's doing it. That's his life. He occasionally writes and submits a few pieces. That's what he really wants to do with his life. He's not even committed enough to get married. He describes 2 long-term relationships that end with both girlfriends accusing him of more or less of not growing up. He's not going to settle down with a job, and he's not going to work toward a stable future with his girlfriend. He lets her be the workhorse, the breadwinner of the relationship. His apathy is not just work-related. It's how he lives all aspects of his life. But the book has a partially happy ending, one I'll let you read for yourself. What I liked about the book, Barker gives everyone nicknames like hippie chick and frat boy. I do that all the time. He's also impacted by whatever song is on the radio while he's working. So am I, anywhere I go. I'm known to sing while shopping. And some of his essays are very thought-provoking. There's this one about UPS to be a delivery helper. It pays $11 an hour. But what's worse is you have to pay union dues of $250. You'd have to work over 20 hours to pay that off. and it's just a temporary position where you have no idea how many hours you'll get that week. How crappy is that? People who need the work will probably do it, but at their expense with no guarantee of X amount of hours. Barker has many of these moments in his essays that will make you think, which I adore. What I didn't like about the book, it was just sort of there. Some of his essays seemed a bit pointless. His voice is strong, but it's not the kind of writing that blows you away, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't think there's anything pretentious about Barker. He's not one of those MFA writers who think they are above the rest of society. But what I really didn't like about the book is that he didn't focus on his writing, his submissions and such, and how he actually became a published author while he did temp work for years. It's enviable. Yet he doesn't develop that aspect. That his ho-hum existence, his apathy for work, his lack of motivation to do much of anything, yet now he's a writer. It's rather ironic when you think about it. I would have liked a couple essays just focused on that aspect. He must have had enough desire, passion, and motivation to write and submit, and kept submitting to find a home for his essays. Considering I'm holding his book right now means he did succeed after all. If you like easy-to-read books that will make you think, yet won't take up much of your mental energy or time, this book is a good one to read. I flew through it quickly, yet stopped enough to mark it with my little kitty cat tabs. You'll get annoyed, I'm sure, but you'll also laugh a bit and will be struck by the idiocracy of the common American workplace, if you haven't already experienced it yourself. The book will force you to reflect on your own work ethic, your own idea of work and purpose, and your own place in whatever business you work. And for that, it's worth a read. Thanks for watching. My goal at Booksmart is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.